Coogs house. The basketball class of 2026 across the country is under scrutiny for not having enough stars, but as the live periods are wrapping up, it feels like the Houston Cougars are really close to landing some diamonds in all that rough.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who can step by, thank you for making the Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate making your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs as the everydayer that you are. Now, if you want to join the conversation but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below which of your socks you put on first. As today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I will say we're putting our shoes and socks and talking some basketball and round ball today. We're going to start in the first segment talking about Peach Jam, as that is the big event, seminal Nike event that just wrapped up. I want to talk some about the Adidas three-stripe circuit as well, because Houston is looking at some recruits on that one. And I want to spend the third segment, not quite a third segment thought experiment, but thinking through some recruiting happening already in 2027's class as well. But first, Peach Jam just wrapped up last week. And I should stress that I did have a guest lined up to come talk about the Peach Jam that was there in person, took a bunch of notes down. I said, hey, jot down stuff on Houston Cougar folks and tell me where you see Houston people at. Things came up. He and I couldn't get on the same page to record at the same time. We're still trying to work on some stuff for next week, but he did send me over his notes to talk through here as far as when he saw Houston guys where, and then I cross-reference that with like when I'm watching videos and looking at stats and things like that. Peach Jam, if you don't know, is a large end of the EYBL Nike AAU season event, happens outside of Atlanta. It's at the end of the summer, every summer, for live events and recruiting basketball. Every major shoe brand has one. All the different, the Adidas circuit was in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Puma was in Bryan, Texas this year, actually, about a week ago. And then Under Armour was up in Chicago. At one point, they were all kind of within a couple-hour driving distance. One of those spread out a little bit. But Peach Jam's the big final one for coaches. And this 2026 class, it's been interesting, has been under fire because, like, there's not a Cooper Flag or an Amen Thompson or the Boozer twins. There's not like a number one guy that everyone's like, okay, we're going to tank our NBA seasons to go get that guy. Really, outside of like everyone kind of the same person at the top of the class, Tyron Stokes, just because he's already built for it. He's like 6'8", 240 perimeter guy. After that, the 2 through 30, 35 is a lot of the same names and faces across every recruiting board and across every blog and across every person that does this recruiting stuff for a living. But who's where within that 2 through 35 is just all over the map. There's not like consensus anywhere else. And I feel like that's for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of strong defenders in this class. Defense is harder to project, though, because you're going to be inherently guarding better offensive players in college, right? So that's a harder thing to project into the college level than an offensive game. If you could shoot, you can shoot, right? And the other thing I think is interesting is, like, in this class, when you don't have those guys that really stick out up there, it's going to come down to a lot of like the success of the individual player. The development is going to come down to where they land and do they get utilized and developed best wherever that is. I do think Houston's done a great job for the entirety of the Sampson era of like finding guys that fit what they want, both on the court and off it. They identify intangibles really well, guys that are coachable in the way they want to be coaching as a staff. They don't take like risky swings on high talent, questionable guys. They continue to pursue guys that they think they got a real shot at. They know when to kind of hang up and stop dialing and focus their efforts, put all their chips in on certain guys, right? They know when to do those things. Biggest example of that seems to be Ikenna Alozie, the 5-star point guard, Dream City Christian, EYBL Scholastic School kid, played with Utah Prospects this summer, changing his AAU program. Alozie, the 5-star point guard, and So he had a lot of contact with the Houston staff. It sounds like Houston was at a bunch of his games. It sounds like he is back and forth on the phone. I mean, obviously within the legal limits, but all the time with the Houston staff. Alozie is Nigerian, and it sounds like Sampson and the crew have pointed out like Olajuwon has an emphasis on the school, but also like there's a large Nigerian culture in Houston if you come out that way and so on. And I think for a kid that's so far away from home, I mean, again, across the globe, I think that actually could be a good selling point on him. Great defender. When he's in transition, he looks like a pro. Like if you are even in transition with him, meaning it's 2-on-2, 3-on-3, it's a basket. Like he can lead a transition break in a big way. His backcourt teammate, Junior County, uh, also on the Utah Prospects group, also a NEC UIBL. He played at Wasatch Academy, which is actually with Isaiah Harwell last year, who's now a Houston Cougar. He wasn't quite as vocal than sounding and talking about Houston, but Houston was obviously watching him at the same time because they're on the same AU team, Alozie and County. And County is like score. Like this guy can shoot, guy can light it up. He's not quite the athlete that Isaiah Harwell or Alozie are, but he is probably a multi-year college guy that can really light it up and really score a lot. Other guards, I think worth mentioning here: Christian Gibson, contact with Houston. Houston watched him play. The Houston Hoops kid. Staff watched them often this summer. He is another multi-year college guy, I think, but he's a good mid-range scorer, attack the rim scorer. And I think he's been considered one of the top 2026s in the greater Houston area for a lot of the recruitment process for those guys in high school. Some guys are catching up to him. I think that that's not a consensus all the time, but obviously a Gibson's still on the radar. Cam Lomax, the guy that came and visited Houston last year. Lomax is a Frisco kid, a DFW kid. Houston saw multiple times in person at Peach Jam. One of those games, I should point out, Cam Lomax had a 30-piece against Team CP3 in front of Kelvin Sampson. Kelvin sitting front row. CP3 has Team CP3 had multiple guys that are like big time athletes. One guy's they have two different guys that are multi-sport college kids. They have a guy in Kendra Harris, who's a 4-star basketball player and 5-star tight end. They have a guy by the name of Deontay Neal, who is a 3-star quarterback and has group of 6 basketball offers. They have a 6'3", 4-star guard as well named Ashton Pierce. And against a team with that kind of a lineup, Cam Lomax went off for 30. Lomax just transferred to Oak Cliff Faith Family, a big EYBL Scholastic team as well. He's had a great AAU season, launched up 30 spots in rankings. He's a high-end 4-star guard at 6 foot tall, which I think is impressive and hard to do. Again, he's got a official visit lined up for September 12th with Houston, had the unofficial last year. Really, really good defender. And I think that it's indicative that his first instinct when asked about, and this was, I think, publicized, but after his game, he had a pretty good that 30 piece against CP3. He talked about like his first comments about what he thought he did well. That game was about like reading passing lanes, getting good idea for what they were trying to set up and like beating them mentally on the defensive end. He just had 30 in front of Kelvin Sampson, and he's like, actually, I want to talk about this defensive stuff. I think I had a really good game on that end, and that tells me a lot about him as well. On offense, he does play off 2 feet a lot. He gets to the lane, is under control, balanced, good point guard in that sense. I think he's probably a scoring point guard, but that's awesome. The story, though, for Nike circuit as far as Houston was concerned was Bryson Howard. Bryson took over this tournament in a lot of ways. He's not the guard like those other guys are. Bryson's a 6'6" forward. He's growing still. He's from Frisco, also a North Texas kid, son of Josh Howard. Josh Howard's an NBA guy, played with the Mavs for a long time, currently coaches at a small school up in North Texas that I knew before this pod started. I can't remember the name. It's like UNT Dallas. I don't think it's UT Dallas North. I think it's UNT Dallas. And anyway, Bryson can really run. And the thing I think people are intrigued by him is he's still got so much upside. He turned 17 this August. Like he's a full year younger than a lot of guys he's playing against. He's just at that grade. I think his best plays on a clip are his intuitive defensive stuff. But Cam Lomax, who we just mentioned, switched from pro skills to Drive Nation. Bryson Howard plays for pro skills. Since that switch happened, this AAU circuit, the reason that his recruitment skyrocketed, right, is because he's become like a lead scorer in that system since they lost Lomax. He's super fluid, had an up and under that felt like if an NBA guy did it, it'd be in the top 10. He shot 45% from three at 6'6" and growing this AAU season, according to the Nike YBL stats. Legitimately feels like as much as his recruitment skyrocketed and Houston offered him like in the late spring, I want to say, Houston still was early in on this kid. And while he took off in Atlanta and had a bunch of 30-piece games and all this kind of stuff, like a lot of people still feel like Houston getting in as early as they did really kind of helped set the scene for this. Christian Collins, another kind of similar 6'8" long athlete. He's a 5-star kid, can go a lot of places across the country. He's consensus. I don't think I've seen him lower than 8th anywhere, but he's not ever higher than 3rd, 4th, 5th. Like he's never number 1, right? Guy in the class. He's a California kid. I think a lot of people are assuming he'll stay in Southern California, go to USC. We'll see more on that. I want to talk about Aziz Olajuwon in a second because I think people are really intrigued by that name. And then I also want to talk about Adidas and more recruiting for the Houston Cougars. Before we get too far, today's show is brought to you, as I mentioned at the top, everybody's over at FanDuel because summer sports are in full swing. And they talk about baseball, golf clubs, swinging a leg in soccer. Swing is the key word there, and FanDuel's the best way to make every one of those games, matches, etc. more exciting. You're already following that action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? Get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned on the beach. I've been using FanDuel for a long time. I use it mostly out of state, but I use it for a long time. And I will say I like the frequent promotions, the ease of the app, the quick payouts, etc. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5. You get $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet hits. You open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Parker Andrew, Locked On Coogs. You're still talking recruiting, and I did talk about Nike circuit, but I got to talk about one last Nike guy before jumping into Adidas, and that is Aziz Olajuwon. Yes, son of Hakeem Olajuwon. And Aziz plays for JL3, John Lucas III, and I think a lot of people saw his recruitment really take off. He got that 4th star. He's getting a bunch of power conference offers and stuff like that. Houston did offer this July, and I think people are like waiting for that to happen. And then he gets the offer, and it's like, is he going to commit? Why didn't he commit already? Like, why wouldn't he want to come to Houston, play for the hometown team, play for his dad's names in the rafters? I do think that pressure is very real. And then I think the latest thing was he published a list of 3 visits. It's like TCU and Stanford and stuff like that, but none of them were Houston. And I think there was like little bit of internet outroar, like, oh, is he not coming to Houston? Why isn't he going to visit Houston? Da, da, da. I think it's safe to say he understands the city of Houston, University of Houston, Sampson company. Like, he's been around the program as the son of Hakeem Olajuwon his whole life, well before Sampson was even there, right? And I think that actually, to be fair, Sampson's done a really good job of bringing in alumni players, so he might actually have been around it more since Sampson got there than before, but that doesn't matter. Aziz is the kind of guy that I think he's going to visit other programs and see what they're like. I don't think the visit outside of officially like doing the rigmarole and taking the gold pictures, which would be really cool with his dad's name and the rafter and the retired jersey era. I just don't think he needs to visit Houston to understand what Houston's about, right? Like, mutual interest is there. Aziz is pretty strong. Now, on the Adidas side of things, a guy that I think does have mutual interest as well, that I understand why, but it's not getting talked about to Houston quite enough for me, is Caleb Holt. Caleb Holt's another one of these 6'5", 6'6" perimeter guys. He plays for Game Time Elite in that. They played at Rock Hill, obviously, in the same time frame here. And listen, Caleb Holt has an NIL deal with Adidas, and he played for an Adidas high school program. He plays for an Adidas AAU team. He is going to go to Prolific Prep, which is now in Florida, but an Adidas basketball academy, right? Like I think I want to assume he's going to an Adidas school, and there feels to be like a lot of money there. And I would point out too that Cooper Flagg played for Duke, who wears Nike, and he's a New Balance guy. He had a New Balance NIL deal in high school, right? And since high school, I should say, since the end of high school. And I say that to say that I don't think it's a done deal that Caleb Holt's going to go to an Adidas school. I also think that a lot of people are saying, well, if he's not going to go to Adidas, he's going to stay home and go to Auburn, Alabama, because both those basketball programs are doing pretty well right now or whatever. I'm telling you, man, there's a connection here between Sampson's staff and them. They watched him play a lot. Caleb Holt and Game Time Elite ATL won the Adidas championships in Rock Hill. And he was best player on that team, most clear-cut, like pro potential kind of guy on that team. Houston was at a lot of his games. It felt like they were at all of them, is what the quote I got. Like there's something to be said about getting FaceTime with the guy and seeing him over and over again. His style of play fits Houston a lot. It is get to your spots on offense, nothing crazy tricky, but a handful of things that work really well. And then it's pure athleticism and playing hard in every other aspect of it. The guy feels like a Coug in a lot of ways. And frankly, if he were not from an area with high-end high school basketball, like say, or high-end college basketball, like the state of Alabama right now, I think there'd be a lot more talk about him to Houston. So we'll see. Arafan Diane is another guy. He's the guy we talked about before when Houston went and visited him in Iowa. He's a 7-footer from Guinea, and he's like 7 foot, like listed 285. He might be bigger than that. Just a gigantic 17-year-old kid. And like his hands, his touch, the ball's on a string when he's got to go. Like it is way too gentle for a guy that big to then be that gentle with the ball, dribbling, passing, whatever, and then woof, just the way he rattles a rim when he dunks because he's so big and strong. Offensively, one of the most talented bigs I've seen in terms of like traditional 7-footers in a long time. And Houston are really connected. Sampson and company, like I said, went and visited him in high school, at his high school. They went and saw a bunch of this Iowa United AAU groups games. He is the kind of guy that is an instant impact on offense. And he's really good as a defensive player at the high school level. Projecting him is hard. I actually kind of think that he's the kind of kid that would benefit from playing with Sampson and working out for Bishop. I think it's unfair that people act like he's out of shape because he never looks like tired out there playing basketball. It's not an out of shape thing, but they're going to make him quicker on his feet, lighter on his toes, coach him through playing pick and rolls. Because right now, the way to attack him as the best big in the class would be to put him on the ball and pick and roll and get him out in space. And I really think for his development, he should continue to work with Sampson on those kind of things. Sampson's done a great job with bigs in the past on that kind of stuff. And frankly, I think it says something that, the traditional Sampson big is like an athletic 6'9" with long arms. And to go after Dion here is like, okay, that's breaking the mold a little bit, but Sampson and company sees something. And I would trust them on that. I think truthfully, like, this is a mutually beneficial relationship that they can continue that going. And I think there's something there. He is the top center in the class. Like he's going to get a big NIL paycheck wherever it is. I don't think that's necessarily the deciding factor for all these kids like people talk about all the time. I do think also basketball is going to be shifting how it works with that after house settlement and stuff like that goes. So we'll see where he lands, but he had a really, really good Adidas run. And frankly, again, we talk about him getting, beat up a little bit in pick and roll defense on the ball and space. But as far as like help side defense, backside dunker spot kind of stuff, he's like quarterbacking the defense in a lot of like he understands the game at a very high level for a 17-year-old kid. Speaking of 17-year-old kids, I want to talk about Ralph Scott for a second. Ralph Scott is probably the fastest rising recruitment listen, I'm not going to act like the expert other guys are, like the Goodmans of the world and so on. I don't know that anyone's ever risen quicker than Ralph Scott's risen. So this guy plays at IMG. He's going to be a senior in high school next year. Plays for Jamal Shed Elite. Found that out the hard way by being corrected online. And he played at the Basketball Without Borders, won MVP. And then he played with Jamal Shed Elite in a different Adidas circuit. They had games in Los Angeles in the last couple weeks, and he went from a kid with, I mean, he had no stars in June to 4 stars today. Like, I mean, he shot up, 6'8", long, rangy, um, and he's got some talent on offense. I don't mean this in a way that disparages that. I think his biggest talent is how hard he plays, and you'll see that consistently across guys Houston's recruiting, right? Like that's a big telltale sign for a Houston recruit. But Ralph Scott, you see that when you watch the video, like the most like obvious thing he does well is play really hard all the time, and I think it's hard to quantify that as a skill, but it is a skill. Right now, 6'8", long arms, fluid. He can get to the rim. He can get to the rack. He plays at IMG, and um, and he played his past time with Jamal Shed and them. He was MVP of Basketball Without Borders, like I mentioned, and I think that really that kind of put his name on some people's radar. And then since his performance with the Jamal Shed group and Adidas, he's gotten offers from Houston, but he also has Texas, Oregon, LSU. Like I mean, he's just lighting it up, right? And so we'll see. Houston got into his offer sheet in the last 10 days, but on the early side of the last 10 days, if that makes any sense. So we'll see how that carries into his recruitment. I'm interested to see where this kid goes and how his college career pans out afterwards, because it is such a unique like it's hard to be out of nowhere when you were also at IMG, right? Does that make sense? Like IMG is a basketball, a sports academy, high-end athletics, very visible across the country, and he's still fairly out of nowhere. And so that balance is interesting. But there's one kid that's not out of nowhere, and I do want to talk about him in a thought experimenty kind of way. But first, Parker Andrews Locked on Coogs here, talking Houston Cougar basketball recruiting as the live periods are wrapping up and the shoe brand circuits are closing. And Puma has really made a name for himself in this. And so I want to start this off by saying that like 4 years ago it was kind of like, oh, the Puma circuit. And now it's like, no, the Puma circuit's got real hoopers. Kingston Fleming was a big part of that. And I should point that out as the guy on campus now representing San Antonio Futures in that group. But real basketball has happened on this Puma circuit in the last 4 or 5 years. That was not happening 4 or 5 years ago. And that is impressive development from the guys running that organization, right? So credit to them. But interestingly enough, in Bryan, Texas, at the Puma circuit, to a person, when you started going around asking what you're seeing, what you're watching, what stands out, it wasn't a 2026 anyone was talking about. Reese Alston, class of 2027, just dominated the Puma circuit all summer long. And frankly, that comes off of having dominated his games at TABC at the start of the summer, comes off of having won a state title with Second Baptist in Houston last year. As a sophomore, the kid can flat play. And Reese Alston, son of Rafer Alston. Rafer Alston's originally from New York City, played for legendary Tarkanian, but that was at Fresno State at the time. Then had a 12-year NBA career. I didn't realize till looking this up. First of all, he actually played for a really good high school program in Queens. I was also on the Wikipedia page. But in his 12-year NBA career, Rafer's longest stretch at a single location was with the Houston Rockets. And that's why that's why they've set up shop in Houston. His son is at Second Baptist in Houston, right? That's how Reese gets to Houston. And Reese is legitimately a guy to keep an eye on as far as like could be the top guard in the class of 2027. There's a couple really good wings in that group and 6'8", 6'9", and all in the 2027 class nationally. And I don't mean to disparage that. But Reese is 6'1", 6'2", depending on where you see him. And little Skip to my Lou. His father was Skip to my Lou of the And One mixtape tour, right? Rafer Alston. He's one of those guys, one of the only guys to the And One thing and also be a long-term NBA vet, right? Reese can do everything. And I know I'm very positive, and people call me way too optimistic about things with basketball, and I talk about what guys can do and not what they can't do, and like I I can't find a hole in what Reese does. Like I was taking my notes down, watching some of these Puma games, and I went back and watched a Second Baptist game in twice speed because I was just trying to figure out something to watch about the kid. I was like, okay, I guess I could say as a point guard, he doesn't pass it often, but it's not that he can't. He actually throws really nice passes. He just doesn't have to a whole lot. I couldn't find a hole in his game. He truly just incredible basketball player. Guy likes Houston as a city. He was at the after the season's over event where they celebrated the Houston Cougar team. Like as a fan, like he was taking pictures with the guy. Like, oh my god, like I think there's something there as far as pulling him into Houston and getting to commit at some point. He, like I say, 6'1", 6'2". I wouldn't call him like a beefed up, jacked, like muscular guy, but he's certainly not too skinny. Um, he gets to the rim, gets above the rim. Um, he can shoot it from three. He can shoot it off the dribble. He defends. He jumps passing lanes. He gets up and contests and blocks shots. Some even. He really he's not his dad in terms of his handle. His dad was an and one mixtape legend, but he uses his handle as an asset to get by guys. He's efficient with it, but also like kind of crafty. I think the most fun thing to watch him do is when he's attacking the rim and there is a true big there. When he does the crafty, the double clutch, the side to side, he starts the right hand and then double clutch the left hand or whatever, like around defenders in the air. He goes up thinking he's got a dunk, has to alter. Like those kinds of things are almost more fun than the dominance kind of stuff. And he can do it all. And I I say this in my thought experiment kind of way. Reese Alston is so good in the class 2027. So good. Um, and the 2026 class does not have those stars that people are tanking their NBA seasons for, right? That they're just not a guy with that kind of hype in that group. If you're Reese, do you look at reclassifying? I don't know what the process be like at Second Baptist School specifically, but across the country, you've seen it happen where guys will change what high school class they're in and graduate early, right? And because for Reese, this kid is probably a one and done player. It's hard to say that about a 6'2" kid, but if there is one, it feels like it's him. And like that 2026, freshman group trying to go pro might be thinner than the 2027 group. I don't know. I will say I feel like there's a lot of 2025s that'll try and go after their second and third year of college that might, crowd the class up a little bit. But I'm sure there's people that are connected to Rayford that could talk to him about that. And also there's probably some value in just having the normal high school experience going to high school for 4 years. I think it's worth watching as far as what he does in his recruitment. And I will say that let's say he stays in class 2027, and he probably does. That's a more likely option here, right? If he stays in class 2027, and let's say he ends up being a Houston Cougar, let's say Houston develops a really good connection with him this year. He's there in town, easy to get a hold of, right, etc. Between Kingston and Cordell and Mercy and the guys you got on your roster right now, and Reese being in class 2027, does that shift and alter where you see the assets and resources being used in the class of 2026? Because we open with talking about 4 or 5 guards that can flat play, and I think could all fit with Houston very well, right? But like, there's only so many minutes. Or do you go get a 2026, a couple of those guards, and you bring in Reese in 2027? If someone transfers out, that's just modern hoops. I don't know what the right answer with all that is, right? And Sampson and company are much better at it than I am, and they can stagger those classes well. I just wonder, with Reese being in your backyard in that 2027 class, will we see shifts and focus on the Bryson Howards, on the Arafan Dions, on the Caleb Holtz, these wings and bigs instead of the guards? Although I think like all those guards would fit, Lomax would fit, I think Alozie would fit, etc. But because of the staggering you're doing other positions, it's a good problem to have. You're interested in good basketball players. They're interested in you back. That's the pretty girl that dance says she'll dance to you. That's a good thing, right? I don't know what the best answer is. I don't know what the best song to dance to is, right? And so we'll see how this all unfolds. I think we'll still get, I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to throw him on blast, but I think we'll still get my expert that was at the Peach Jam in person on sometime soon. But we'll talk all things Houston Cougar basketball recruiting throughout the recruitment cycle as more news breaks. We also got football season coming up. We got some PFF lists to break down. All kinds of fun here at Locked on Coogs. So subscribe and hit the bell so you know that we're live. For a second lesson of the day, I'm going to say go find Locked on College Basketball. They're doing a great job with that, talking about the offseason that the basketball programs are having across the country. So go check out Andy, Isaac, and the gang. Locked on Coogs, primarily Locked on podcast. I mean, it's your team every day. Go Coogs.